Hello everyone, how's it going? Welcome to the Turbo 360 tutorial series, and in this series we're going to go through a quick Redux walkthrough. So this is not going to be an actual project, it's just going to be an introduction to Redux and the mechanics behind Redux and how to set up a simple React Redux project, a demo project. So this is good for people who have a basic knowledge of React but are starting to get into Redux as a state management library. So if you have some React background and are looking to get into Redux, this is a good place to begin. So let's get started. So here's a diagram that simply shows how Redux is organized, React Redux. It's simplified, but it gets the job done. What you need to understand is that the state is right here, is where all your data is stored. Sometimes this is called the store. So in my projects, I call that the store. A lot of projects, that's what they call it. However, it's a little bit misleading. The store is really a collection of sort of mini stores called reducers. So you normally have a collection of reducers that get combined into the store. And the reducers are where all the data for your application is really organized. Your reducer is where the data gets sorted and segmented into different groups and collections and things like that. And the reducer is what does all the work to actually organize your data the way you want to organize it. So let's say we have an application for like a photo sharing app with users and photos. You might have one reducer for users, all the users, and another reducer for all the photos. Basically organizing your data distinctly into different groups and categories. So that's one way that could be thought of. When data changes, when anything of significance with the data happens, like a new user updates his profile, a photo gets uploaded to the backend, etc. Or maybe a photo changes. Maybe the user changes a caption of a photo, something like that. Anything that creates some significant change on the data. That change happens through what's called an action. And so essentially an action is a means of delivering a, a data change to the reducer. So the action sends a signal to the reducer, and the reducer then responds to that signal and updates the data according to whatever you define as the response, the appropriate response. So, example of an action might be photo uploaded, and then that action would be created and then sent to the reducer, and then the reducer would receive that action, probably the photo reducer, and then it would update the collection of photos. It would add the new photo to the collection, to the array or the map or whatever, however you want to organize it. And that happens through action to reducer. So the actions, they dispatch actions to the reducer. And then once the reducer completes the update, the entire store is now updated, which then propagates changes to the components. So all these green circles are components. And the way you want to think of it is that this page component is a container that contains these subcomponents, usually called presentation components or view components, or sometimes called DOM components. Whereas the page is sometimes called a smart component. The distinction is that the page is connected to the store directly. There's a direct connection from the page to the store. So it has a liaison to the data. And that's why it's called a smart component. It's connected to the brains of the application. And then the quote-unquote dumb components, or the presentation components, are usually just rendered as subcomponents in the page, and all the data is passed from the page to the presentation components. That's actually pretty consistent with regular React. That's not really a Redux specific idea. But the part where Redux comes in is that the store is connected to the page, and then the page uh, determines which properties from the store, what pieces of data it needs to know about. And those pieces of data are passed down as properties. And then whenever the reducer does any change, makes any change to the data, the store updates, and then the page hears about it, and then it propagates all the changes to its subcomponents, its presentation components. And that's a standard React Redux architecture. One thing I would add to this diagram is that this is clearly oversimplified, but normally what you see is not just one container. You'll see you see a collection of containers. So you'll see one called page, another one called, like, I don't know, groups, and then it'll have its own subcomponents, and then another one called photos. It'll have its own subcomponents, so forth and so on. And so this is really just a simplified example of the React Redux architecture. So, so that's it. That's a quick, high-level overview of how React Redux applications are organized. So in the next video, we're going to actually create a React Redux application, and I'm going to show you where all the code is organized in this architecture. But what you want to do in the next video, as you watch the next video, is you want to have this diagram open at all times so that you can follow along in the code while keeping a mental picture of where we are in this diagram. That's extremely important. So make sure that you have this diagram. I'll add a link where you can download this diagram. I just got it off Google, though. I didn't create this, just to give credit where credit is due. I just ripped it off Google, to be honest. So React Redux diagram. It's this one right here. So thank you to BeBetterDeveloper.com. Appreciate the image, and I'll make a downloadable link to this image on my on the tutorial page where you're watching this, and then you want to have that open while you follow along in the next video. So again, you can keep a very clear mental picture of where we are in this diagram as we're working in the actual code. Okay, so stay tuned for that, and thanks for watching.